Welcome everyone to today's webinar for Workday Education and Government team regarding why institutions are moving to Workday HCM. My name is Corey McLean and I'm with the Pre-Sales Education and Government team here at Workday, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. All participants have been muted and will remain muted throughout today's webinar. If you do have a question, please feel free to post it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If we have time at the end of today's webinar, we'll answer some of those questions. If not, we'll get a response to your question via email sometime next week after the holidays. I'm joined today by Michael Porsche, who's a solution consultant with the HCM team, and he'll be leading today's webinar. So with that, Michael, I turn things over to you.
Great, thanks, Corey. So we're going to, before we get started, I just wanted to go over the safe harbor slide and let everyone know that, Workday has a rapid development capabilities, and so we're constantly enhancing and bringing out new features. We want to make sure that any decisions you make are based on current functionality within the application versus any forward-looking statements that may be made. So as Corey said, I'm Michael Porsche. I'm the HCM solution consultant. I've been working with Workday for about 7.5 years. Prior to that, I spent about 5 years with Oracle. I spent about 5 years with PeopleSoft. And then in the early 90s, I actually spent 3 years with SCT on the Banner solution. And it's interesting because most Banner customers that I engage with, they say the product hasn't changed much since then. So what's Workday all about? Workday's about the cloud. And there's lots of advantages to that. Workday was designed and developed using a clean sheet of paper. It wasn't the multiple acquisitions that were bolted together and integrated and a bunch of disparate systems. It was one system from the ground up. And all of the individuals responsible for the application had prior experience in developing applications. So what does that mean for you? It means the power of one. It's one source of data, one security data model, one user experience, and one community for sharing and collaborating amongst not only Workday and the customers, but also our business partners. And all this is we're capable of doing all this because of the underlying technology. And one of the biggest areas is the business process framework. What that is we call that really workflow on steroids. It's workflow, but it's so much more than that. The transactions get kicked off and there may be approvals that have to happen. There may be actions, there may be integrations, there may be, reports, there may be a bunch of different steps that's involved in processing that transaction. And that's where the business process framework comes in. We're based on an object data model, and what that means is that anywhere you see an object, and an employee is an object, an organization's an object, anywhere that is within the application, you can drill down into the detail behind that. And you can also do related actions, and I'll show you examples of that as well. And then we have, native reporting and analytics within the system, and that gives us the capability to use reporting and analytics throughout, even within the business processes. One security model, you're not having to maintain multiple user IDs and log in on and off and those types of things. And then the integration cloud, we know we're not everything to everyone, and we're going to have to integrate to other systems. So we make that very easy and very straightforward. We provide templates and a lot of delivered integrations as well. And then machine learning, that's something that we're at the forefront of. We're constantly enhancing our system to take advantage of machine learning. And it's going to be a huge advantage to our customers in the future. So having said that, what we're looking at is all of Workday. And Workday is just one module. It is not multiple modules. We don't have a student module, a financial module, an HCM module. It truly is just one module. Having said that, you can, utilize the functional areas separately. You don't have to purchase all of Workday. But what that allows you is the full cycle. So from planning, planning your budget, planning your headcount, how many students you have, how many faculty members do you need, and then executing that. So when it comes to HCM, you need to recruit those individuals, and then you need to train them. You need to make sure you're retaining them, and then analyzing. Am I over budget? Do I have employees that are at risk of leaving? How are my expenses? Those types of things. And that's what you get from the human capital management plan: to hire, develop, the platform, reward, to retain, and adapt to succeed. So all of those pieces are incorporated into our HCM capabilities. So having said that, let's go ahead and get into our demo. And I'm going to start out with some mobile capabilities. The millennials coming out or go to college now with 8 or 10 different devices, and they expect when they go to work that they are connected with their devices at their place of employment as well. So, you've got the baby boomers that are retiring and aging out and backfilling those with the millennials. They want to be connected. So here we see a mobile device. We work on all the mobile devices. I'm logged in as a user. His name is Raul, and you can see some of the capabilities that he has here. So one example of that is pay slips. If Raul was going to go out and refinance his home or purchase a home, you may have your payroll department getting bombarded with calls from employees saying, hey, I need my last 2 copies of my pay slips. Well, if you give the employees access to the information within Workday, they could literally be sitting in the loan officer's office and pull up their last pay slips and either email or print right there in that office those pay slips. So that reduces the number of phone calls your payroll department gets and reduces the labor and the overhead there. So we can do other things. We can do things like time off requests. So Raul's been working really hard. It's around the holidays. Maybe he wants to take some time off. So he can look and see what his available balance is. And down at the bottom, he can go ahead and request that time off and say, okay, maybe next week I want to take a couple days off. So he can view the balances, make sure he has enough balances. What the system will also do is if he's taking time off in the future, it will look at what he's going to accrue and what he wants to take off in that future time frame and look at it as in the future, not as his balance as of today. So maybe he wants to take off next Friday. He can click on that day. He could take multiple days off if he wanted, and then he can go ahead and request that time off. So what the system is doing is going out there and looking to make sure at the point in time he's taken that time out of vacation that he's got enough time. Now you can see he's taken 8 hours. Down below you can see a submit button. So what that submit button is, anytime you see a submit button, that's kicking off the business process framework that we talked about earlier. So there may be additional steps. So Raul can go ahead and click on submit. It kicks that business process off. And you can see the next in line for that transaction is Jill Jones, who happens to be Raul's manager as well as the HR partner. Some additional things that he can go ahead and do while he's in the mobile application as well. In addition to that, is he can go in and perhaps learning. So you're always trying to develop and train your users and your employees, and we have learning built right into the system. So we can see at the top there's some campaign capabilities there. So he can look into that and say, okay, we want to push this learning out to this targeted population. So you can do that, and that's any data within HR and within Workday. It's not just what's in your learning system. And then he can come down here and we can see based on his preference, his interest, it can suggest certain learning content. If he wanted to go ahead and look at that learning, he could go ahead and pull that up if it's an on-demand. Notice there's an Enroll My Team. Raul happens to be a manager as well, so it's going to not only allow him to take that course, but he can enroll his team as well. And then he is a manager, so he has the team capability, so he can look at his direct reports and see that he has Christy, that is direct report. He could drill down into Christy, get some additional information. Now, all this information he's accessed is based on what security he has. So the system's only going to let him see the information he has security access to on the employees he has access to. So notice got all of her contact information here, phone, etc. And up at the top right-hand corner, you'll see those 3 little dots, and that's the related action. So right from her record, he can go out and maybe do a job change, a promotion, a compensation increase, look at her talent. There's multiple actions that he can perform right off of her record. He doesn't have to go back through a menu structure, and he's doing all this from a mobile device. He's also a hiring manager, so he's got access to recruiting. So he can go in here and look at all the open jobs that he currently has and monitor those to make sure they're being fulfilled. He can see there's 3 here. He can drill into one of them and see, okay, how many active candidates do I have in there? And he can see that he's got 6, and then it gives him the funnel view to show where those candidates are within each stage of the recruiting process. So now he can collaborate with the recruiter and make sure that they're getting those open positions filled on a timely basis, because all of that information is right there within the system. Now, having said that, a lot of recruiting systems, they're third party, they're isolated systems. So one of the challenges is that if you've got an employee that wants to apply, how do they apply? You either have to load all of your employees into that external recruiting system, or your employees have to apply as external candidates. Within Workday, they apply with their HCM profile. So they don't have to key in an application or any of that. They can look at the jobs right there through Workday, apply using their HCM profile, and the recruiting system knows automatically which candidates are external and which candidates are internal. So right from there, he could go ahead and apply. And then there's also reporting capabilities. He has access to dashboards, expenses. If you're at a conference and you're eating out at a restaurant and you get the expense, you can go ahead and take a picture through the mobile application. That picture of that receipt will be stored in Workday, and then you could submit your expense report and don't have to worry about maintaining that receipt. So all of that is capable through the mobile application. So let's go back into, now we're going to go back into the desktop. So now I'm logged in as Jill Jones. So as I mentioned earlier, Jill Jones is Raul's manager. She's also an HR super user, so she has access to pretty much anything within the application. Now, one of the things about Workday is when Workday was designed and developed, we wanted Workday to be more of a consumer type of an application. So it's Christmas time, and I can bet that everyone on the phone has probably bought something off of the internet. I can also bet that probably no one that shopped on the internet was ever trained to shop on the internet. It's just intuitive. It's easy to use, and that's how Workday was designed. So our user interface developers really come from the consumer background world, the Amazon, the LinkedIn, those types of developers, to give it a very consumer-esque look. So you notice up at the top, there's a search bar. So you can go in and say, okay, I want everything associated with human resources. And it'll come back with all the matches. Now, off to the left, you can see categories, so you can reduce the amount of returns. But the other thing you can do is you can also put a shortcut key in there and say, I want only organizations, and it'll reduce that search to only those organizations. Now, you'll notice when I go through the application, I'm going to do this entire demo. I'm never going to pull up a menu, because Workday is designed to go and utilize just the capabilities, the analytics, the dashboards, and those types of things, the searches, to navigate through the system. We do have a menu structure. The other thing you won't see me do is put any item numbers in, or numbers, and I won't put a department number or an employee number. They're all there, and you can access that information with those numbers, but that's more for integrations. When you shop on the internet, you don't shop by item number, you shop by description, and that's the way Workday was designed. So you're going to put the employee's name or the department name to access that typically. Again, if you're more comfortable with the numbers, it'll certainly work with the numbers as well. Now, if we go into My Team, this is more for your manager self-service capabilities. And one thing about Workday is Workday self-service was just inherently part of the application. It wasn't an afterthought like your traditional systems. My background was PeopleSoft. When it was designed, way back in the 80s, there was no workflow, there was no self-service. It was all additional functionality, and it really didn't perform and do what users need, so the adoption rate was really low. The only way you're going to get users to use the system is if it does what they want and it's easy to use. And that's really how Workday was designed. So if we come into the self-service here, you can see that they've got recent activity. So I see Raul has a performance review and waiting on his self-evaluation. Carmen Harris has one as well, and waiting on the manager happens to be Jill. And then we can see the direct reports for Jill. So she has her team, but she also has the matrix team. So that's more the dotted line reporting capability. And then there's some actions, tasks, views on the right-hand side. Now, these dashboards I'm showing you are configurable. You can configure these, put your own analytics, put your own actions, your own views in here, and really configure them however you want. And that's unique to each user as well. Now, one of the analytics we see on here is a My Team's retention risk prediction. So one of the things Workday does very well is being proactive. It's going to let you know of potential problems that might occur within your organization. So if you have employees that might be at risk, the system's going to let you know that. So we see all these analytic indicators. So it's giving you a high-level view of this, and you only have to focus on those red indicators. The green are fine, the yellow you got to kind of keep an eye on, but the red, those are the critical ones. So you can see right here, Dolores Carnes' loss impact is critical. And notice down here, she has a loss impact. It says the employee has a long commute of 1 hour or longer. Now, we don't deliver any commute data within the system. We allow you to extend the system. And this is one of the areas that we extended the system for demo purposes, is we added commute time and commute distance. And not only that, but we store it in seconds and meters, but we're displaying it in hours because we can use calculated fields to do that conversion and then report on the calculated field instead of the stored data. So the system is very flexible from that perspective, being able to get that information. Now, if you wanted to look at additional information, you could do a related action and pull up a view of her information and see what her current job is, what her talent information is. So all of that information is right there. In addition to that, you could drill right into her name there and get detailed information about her. So now we can see the 360-degree profile view of all of her information. Now I'm going to tell you how long I've been in the industry. When I first started, I used to implement mainframe green screen systems. And the complaint was always, well, you've got all this information on one screen, it's too cluttered, we'd like to spread it out a little bit. So then here comes PeopleSoft in the client server world, and we spread that data over 6 or 7 pages. And then the complaint was, well, can I get all that data on one screen? We give you the best of both worlds. We're going to deliver this profile, and notice up at the top we have different tabs. Now those tabs are configurable. You can reorder them, you can take them off, but what else you can do is you can generate a custom report and add a custom report as a tab here, and then you can configure the information however you want. And you're not restricted to just HR. This could be HCM, expense, student, data all in one view, and then add that report right here. So it's very flexible in those means of being able to do that. So when we look at her overview, we can see here's the organization, the position, the job, all of that detailed information. And we have, contact, personal, career, performance, compensation, company property. So, when it comes to purchasing, if that asset's assigned to her, it's automatically available here, even though it may be a financial capability. Benefits, pay, time off, and then we have feedback. So you can do anytime feedback. You can have feedback as part of the performance evaluation. Again, very flexible in the capabilities of Workday. And we also have favorites. So when it comes to navigation, everybody has a different, job and function within your institution, and they can take the favorites and put what they access the most on that favorites right here. So we can see that there's some views, there's some objects, there's some actions. But one of the views right here is find workers. So this is a faceted search. So again, if you think about shopping on the internet, when you go out to one of these websites, you're going to get the different facets on the left. So if you're looking for a refrigerator, you're going to get 2,000 refrigerators that's going to be displayed. But you can go in and narrow that down. So if you're looking for someone, maybe you've got diplomats coming in from a foreign country, you can go into language here and say, okay, I only want Spanish speaking, but I only want management too. So you're going to come in here and say, I only want directors. So notice that there's 5. So it reduces all of those employees within the system down to only those 5. So if you think about shopping, you're going to go into a website and you're going to say, I want all side-by-side stainless steel refrigerators, and it's going to take 2,000 refrigerators and narrow it down to 20. And then when you're shopping, you're going to say, okay, I want these 3 items. So you're going to click on them. I'm saying these 3 employees, and then you're going to compare. So now you're doing a side-by-side comparison of them. Again, think about the analogy to shopping. You're doing the side-by-side comparison of the items you're purchasing, and you're doing the same thing with employees. So you're comparing these employees so that you're able to see which one might be the best for that function that you perhaps are looking for that individual. So again, if you have those diplomats, you want language, you want director level, but there may be other criteria that you're looking for as well. The system will do that for you. Now, we support higher ed institutions, and we do that through the academic capabilities of the system. So not only do we have find workers, but we have find academics. So you can go in and say, okay, I want to look at all of my tenured employees, and then you can say, what's their tenure home, natural sciences. So again, we're taking all of the faculty members and reducing it down to those 3. So now I have those 3 individuals. I can do a related action if you need to take action on that employee, or you can drill into the detail of that individual. Now notice there's another item that shows up on the profile that was not on the last profile we looked at, and that's academics, because we're going to track all the academic information along with the faculty member. So we can see here all the tenure information. We can see all the current appointments, and Dr. Audra Hodges happens to have multiple appointments. So not only does she have a primary appointment, but she's got 2 dual appointments as well. She could also be in a named professorship and also be maybe a member of a committee. Now, if we look at her pay right here, her overview, we can see that faculty members typically are paid a little bit different. So we can come down here and we can see that they have an annual disbursement period right here and a work period. So they're working for 9 months, but they're being paid over 12 months. So this is a 9/12 employee, but they could be 9/9. They could be 9/10. They could be 10/12. It's just how you define it here and how they're paid. The system will do the appropriate calculations within Workday payroll. So very flexible from that perspective. So now we're going to go back into Find Academics just one more time and do a search on different information. So we did tenured, but we also have adjunct. So there are a lot of universities and colleges and institutions out there that employ a lot of adjuncts, and we see Brian Prince here. So if we drill into Brian Prince, adjuncts are sometimes paid differently than faculty members or staff. So if we go into compensation, we can see that they have activity pay right here. So we can look at the historical activity pay associated with him and see, okay, how has he been paid? So we can see in the fall semester, spring semester, he's got different payment. And then we can look at the assignment details associated with that and see that adjuncts or might be paid differently. So a lot of institutions pay them based on course credit. So we can see the lecture is based on course credit. He's also mentoring, and he gets paid for that based on the number of students he mentors. And then there's a payment schedule, and that payment schedule may not necessarily coincide with your pay period schedule. So it may be that maybe they get 25% at the beginning of the semester, 25% in the middle of the semester, and 50% at the end of the semester. So it's able to accommodate that as well. So now we've talked about dashboards and reporting. Now, if you remember, Raul submitted a time off request. So if we go into the inbox right here, we can see that there's the absence request from Raul. So he's got an absence request out here. And as a matter of fact, he's got 2 absence requests. So he can look at both of those absence requests and notice what pops up. There's an embedded analytic that pops up. That's part of the business process. So one of the things Workday does is it provides you information within the system to make sure you're making the right decision on these transactions. So if you notice, this says team time off for same period. So you notice that Dolores is trying to take time off, Michelle is time off, and Raul is time off. So there's 3 different employees that Jill has trying to take time off for Friday. Now, in a typical situation, you'd have a manager that would not have insight to this information. They'd come in on Friday and be 3 employees short. Well, Workday is going to notify you of that prior to that happening. So at this point, Jill can say, okay, yes, I can afford to have 3 employees off, or no, I can't, and either deny or send it back with a message saying, Raul, you can't take Friday off, but you can take another day off because I've already got too many employees off on that day. So you're not going to show up and you'll be understaffed. Workday is going to provide that information for you. And if he wanted to go in and approve that, he could go ahead and click approve, and that transaction would be approved. If there were additional steps within the transaction, then it would be routed to those individuals. So very easy to do that. Now, we've also got some other dashboards out here as well. One of the dashboards we have is recruiting. So within recruiting, we have a lot of different analytics out here. And you can develop your own analytics and reports as well. So notice again, we have on the right-hand side reports and actions that need to occur. So instead of having to go through that menu structure, you have that right at your fingertips. We can see all the job requisitions by location. But then we see source effectiveness right here. Every recruiting system on the market can handle this type of report. But does this really tell you anything? This tells you where you're getting a volume of candidates from. but it doesn't tell you anything about how good those candidates are once you hire them. Because Workday is the power of one and all the information is in one system, if we go to our talent management dashboard, we can come in here and see there's a lot of different talent reports as well. There's the 9 box. There's, your My Team's review ratings, your talent summary, your succession plans. But notice down here, we have performance by hiring source. Now, this is information that I think would be very valuable to you. Traditional systems have trouble giving you this type of information because the recruiting systems are typically siloed. They're a third-party application. In order to get this information, you would have to take all of the information from recruiting, from talent, and from HR and download it out into a data warehouse to get your reporting. So you end up with stale data. You have all those integrations that you have to maintain out to that data warehouse. This is native within Workday. So you're able to now find out, okay, what's the hiring source of my highest performers? So you can look at them and say, okay, this from a recruiting standpoint, recruiters love this because they say, now I know I want to focus my attention and I want to focus my recruiting dollars on these hiring sources because this may not be where I get my most candidates, but it's where I get my best candidates. So Workday is able to give you that information natively out of the system. And that's because we were designed from the ground up, started with a clean sheet of paper. We didn't take a bunch of acquisitions and try to bolt them together. So from an institution perspective, we also have an academic dashboard. So within the academic dashboard, you can see there's actions and reports here. Notice the Find Academics that we accessed earlier is available here as well. And then you get some additional information. So you get your academic appointment summary. So by academic units, how many faculty members do I have? Academic by gender and ethnicity. So what kind of affirmative action impact does this have? You can also see, faculty members on track and monitor those. We also have alert configuration where those faculty members that have tenure reviews can automatically alert the dean and maybe HR of that upcoming academic review. And then we have workforce planning. So within workforce planning, we have a bunch of analytics here as well. One of the ones we have is, are we at risk of an aging workforce? So if we come here and look and see I have employees from 51 to 60, you can drill down into there and say, okay, I want those by race and ethnicity, and then perhaps you want to do a multi-dimensional drill down, and you can go in and say, I want that by gender as well to see what impact those potential employees that are going to be retiring might have on my affirmative action plan. Now, you can take that same report, drill into different information and say maybe instead of that you want to drill in by supervisory organization and say what departments are these employees in. So taking the same analytic, drilling out into a different fashion, and you're getting different information. So hopefully that's given you a good sense of what Workday is capable of and how it would impact your day-to-day operations and make your job and your life a lot easier at your specific institution. So having said that, we're going to open it up for any questions. I don't know, Corey, do we have time or have any questions?
Thank you very much, Michael. We really appreciate that overview. I think we are right at time, so we're going to go ahead and end our webinar. Any questions that have been submitted, we'll get a response to you in the latter half of next week. And with that, thank you very much for your time today and enjoy your weekend and holiday season. Take care, everyone.